Gerald Matsuda died at his desk. Coronary event, 67 years old. Still logging billable hours at the accounting firm he joined in 1989. His colleagues found him on a Tuesday morning, slumped over a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet was fine. Gerald was not. His estate liquidated at $2.4 million. That was the number that made the local paper. $2.4 million. A number most people in his town would consider a lottery win. Gerald had never taken a vacation. Not a real one. He'd done long weekends, sure. Drive somewhere, check into a hotel, bring his laptop. But the kind of trip where you turn your phone off and actually disappear for 2 weeks? Never. He told his sister he'd do it next year. He said that for 23 consecutive years. I found Gerald's story because I read obituaries. Sounds morbid. It is morbid. But I read them because they're the only honest financial documents left in America. Nobody lies in an obituary. The numbers are real. The regrets are real. The patterns are unmistakable. Gerald wasn't unlucky. Gerald was a system working exactly as designed. He did everything the financial industrial complex told him to do. He maxed out his 401k. He avoided credit card debt. He drove used cars. He lived in a house worth less than he could afford. He checked every box on the responsible saver checklist. And the reward for that responsibility? He died at his desk, exhausted, having never spent a single dollar of that $2.4 million on anything that brought him actual joy. The money went to his niece and nephew. Nice kids, from what I could gather. They bought boats. One of them bought a vacation home in Arizona. Gerald paid for all of it. He just never got to enjoy any of it. Now you might be thinking, okay, that's sad, but that's just one guy who took it too far. That's an edge case. That's the financial equivalent of dying from drinking too much water. Technically possible, but you'd have to really work at it. So let me tell you about David and Patricia Holloway. The Holloways lived 3 doors down from my aunt in suburban Denver. Nice couple. Public school teacher and hospital administrator. Dual income, no kids, solid pensions waiting for them. They'd spent their entire married life planning the big trip. That's what they called it. Capital letters, definite article. The big trip. 12 countries in 14 months. They had a map on their kitchen wall with little pins marking every destination. They'd been adding pins since 1994. I remember visiting my aunt in 2012. David walked me through the itinerary. This was 14 years after they'd started planning. He had it memorized. 3 weeks in New Zealand, then Australia, then up through Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, over to India, then through Europe, and in Portugal. They had the routes mapped. They had the budget saved. They had the travel guides dog-eared and annotated. We're going next year, David told me. Patricia's wrapping up a project at the hospital. Next spring, we pull the trigger. Next spring came. They didn't go. Patricia's project had complications. The timeline slipped. 1 more year, they said. We want to do this right. 1 more year became 2 more years. Then David got the diagnosis. Parkinson's. Early onset, aggressive progression. Within 18 months, the pins on that kitchen wall map became monuments to a future that would never arrive. They'd done the responsible thing. They'd waited until they had enough. Until the timing was right. Until they could afford to do it properly. They had enough in 2010. They had enough in 2012. They had enough in 2014. They just never bothered to check. David's in assisted living now. Patricia visits every day. The map is still on the wall, I'm told. Neither of them can look at it. One more story. This one's from my own life, which means I lived it, and it sounds fake, but I'm going to tell you anyway. My first real client, back when I was doing consulting work in my 20s, was a man named Russell. Russell ran a distribution company. Mid-sized, regional, nothing fancy. He'd built it from nothing over 30 years. Russell was 62 when I met him, and he had a number in his head. I don't mean a vague sense of enough. I mean an actual, specific, written down number. He calculated it in an Excel spreadsheet in 1998, and he'd updated it annually for inflation, and he was $200,000 away from that number when I started working with him. $200,000. That was the gap between Russell and his magic number. Here's what fascinated me about Russell. His business was generating about $400,000 a year in profit. His personal expenses were roughly $80,000. He was saving $320,000 annually, and his investment portfolio, thanks to decades of disciplined contributions, was already sitting at $3.1 million. I asked him what he was planning to do with the business. Sell it? Hand it to his kids? I'm going to run it for another 5 years, he said. Build up the war chest a little more. Make sure I have enough. Russell's portfolio, at a conservative 6% return, was generating $186,000 a year in growth. His savings were adding $320,000. Total annual wealth increase, $506,000. Russell was 62 years old with a family history of heart disease. His father had died at 64. His grandfather at 61. I ran the numbers for him. If he worked 5 more years, assuming the same savings rate and market returns, his portfolio would grow to approximately $6.8 million. That would generate $408,000 annually at a 6% withdrawal rate. His expenses were $80,000. Russell was going to trade 5 years of his life. And remember, he was in the demographic danger zone to add $328,000 in annual income he would never spend. He already had more than he needed. He was going to work 5 more years to have more than he needed. When I showed him the math, he got quiet. Then he said something I've heard 100 times since. But what if something goes wrong? What if something goes wrong? The mantra of the oversaver. The prayer of the perpetually unready. Here's the thing about something going wrong. Something has already gone wrong. You're reading documents from a guy who reads actuarial tables for fun. I can tell you exactly what goes wrong. People get sick. People die. People reach the age where their bodies stop cooperating with their bucket lists. That's not a risk. That's a guarantee. The only variable is timing. All 3 of these people, Gerald, the Holloways, Russell, shared something in common. They weren't unlucky. They weren't financially illiterate. They were doing exactly what the financial advice industry told them to do. Save more, save longer, save until you're absolutely certain. They just never asked the question that matters. Certain of what? What if the most responsible thing you could do is stop being so responsible? I'm going to show you something today that nobody in the financial advice industry wants to show you. I'm going to show you the exact age where your money becomes more valuable than your labor. The specific crossover point where every additional dollar you save costs you more than it gives you. And I'm going to give you the calculation you can run in about 90 seconds to know whether you've already hit it. There's a specific crossover age where your money outworks your labor. It's not a feeling. It's not a vibe. It's math. Cold, impersonal, doesn't care about your feelings math. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Most financial advice is built on one fundamental assumption. More saving is always better. The 401k contribution limits, designed to maximize saving, the tax deductions for retirement contributions, incentives to save more. The entire financial planning industry's default recommendations save 10%, 15%, 20% of your income is built on the premise that the solution to every financial problem is more saving. But here's what nobody tells you. Saving is a means, not an end. Saving is the engine that builds the engine. At some point, you stop building the engine and you let the engine run. Before we get into the actual numbers, I want to mention something. I built a free early retirement calculator because every online calculator I found was mathematically wrong. Most of them use outdated assumptions about returns, or they ignore inflation adjustments, or they build in hidden "you need more" bias. Mine uses actual BlackRock and Vanguard historical return logic. It's in the description. Use it. Don't use it. But if you've ever run those other calculators and thought, this can't be right, your instincts were correct. Okay, let me introduce a framework that's going to come up throughout this. I call it the 2 engines. Engine 1 is your labor. This is your salary, your contributions, your hustle. Every dollar you earn from waking up and going to work is engine 1. Every dollar you scrape together and deposit into an investment account is engine 1 output. Engine 1 is you, physically, mentally, actually working. Engine 2 is compound growth. This is your money working, not you, your money. It grows while you sleep. It grows while you scroll social media. It grows while you argue with strangers about politics. Engine 2 doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't take vacations. It just compounds. For the first 15 to 20 years of your investing life, Engine 1 does everything. You put money in, the balance grows because you put money in, Engine 2 is technically there, but it's pathetic. You contribute $10,000. Your portfolio grows by $10,200. The $200 is Engine 2, awkwardly trying to be helpful. It's cute. It's like a toddler trying to help with yard work. But here's what happens. Engine 2 gets stronger every year. Not because you're doing anything differently. Just because compounding is a mathematical law that doesn't care about your feelings. Your portfolio gets bigger. The percentage return stays roughly the same. But 7% of a bigger number is more dollars. And at some point, this is the crossover. Engine 2 starts producing more than Engine 1. The crossover point. That's what this entire thing is about. Let me give you a test you can do right now. Actually, right now. If you're driving, don't. Wait until you're somewhere you can write down 3 numbers. But this takes about 90 seconds once you have the numbers. Here are the 3 numbers you need. Number 1, your annual savings. This is the total amount you contribute to all retirement and investment accounts in a year. Not your total income, not your expenses. Just the money you save and invest. Number 2, your current portfolio balance. This is everything. 401k, IRA, brokerage accounts, everything invested for long-term growth. Don't count your emergency fund or your checking account or the cash under your mattress. Just investments. Number 3, years until you want to be done. This isn't official retirement age. This is when you want the option to stop working. Could be 55, could be 60, could be 70. Your call. Here's a calculation. Take your portfolio balance and multiply it by 7%. That's 0.07. If you have $300,000, multiply by 0.07. That's $21,000. Write that number down. Now compare it to your annual savings. If your annual portfolio growth, that 7% number, is 2 to 3 times larger than your annual savings, you've hit the handoff point. Engine 2 is now doing more work than Engine 1. You've crossed over. Let me show you what this looks like with real numbers. Scenario 1. You have $1 million invested at 7% average annual return, which historically is conservative for a diversified portfolio over long periods. That's $70,000 of growth per year, every year, without you contributing a single additional dollar. Now, let's say you're saving $15,000 a year. That's a solid savings rate for most people. Maxing out an IRA, maybe some additional contributions to a 401k. Compare $70,000 of growth versus $15,000 of savings. Engine 2 is producing 4.6 times what Engine 1 is contributing. You're already across the crossover. Your money is working harder than you are. Scenario 2, $300,000 invested. 7% return is $21,000 annual growth. You're saving $10,000 a year. Growth is 2.1 times your savings. You're right at the edge of the crossover. Engine 2 is starting to pull its weight. Scenario 3, $2 million invested. 7% is $140,000 annual growth. You're saving $30,000 to $40,000 a year. Engine 2 is producing 3.5 to 4.6 times what you're contributing. The crossover happened years ago. You just never noticed. Now here's where people get uncomfortable. I can feel the objections coming, but 7% isn't guaranteed. What about inflation? What if the market crashes? All valid concerns. All things we can adjust for. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If you're already at the crossover point and you keep saving at the same rate, you're not protecting yourself. You're just accumulating. And accumulation without purpose isn't financial responsibility. It's hoarding with a spreadsheet. Let me introduce another framework. I call this the 3 milestones. Milestone 1, the safety zone. This is having enough cash on hand for emergencies. 3 to 6 months of expenses in a liquid account. This isn't investment money. This is my car broke and I need $4,000 tomorrow money. Most people never get past this mental hurdle because they're so focused on long-term saving that they forget to build the short-term buffer. If you don't have this, stop everything else until you do. Milestone 2, the coast number. This is the milestone I want you to focus on. The coast number is the portfolio value where if you stop saving today and contributed nothing else, you'd still hit your target by your target age. Your money, left alone, does the rest. You coast. Hence the name. Milestone 3, freedom. This is the number where you could walk away today. Not coast to freedom later. Actually, stop. The portfolio, with a reasonable withdrawal rate, covers your expenses indefinitely. This is the finish line. Most people think this is the only milestone that matters. They're wrong. The coast number is the hidden milestone. Nobody talks about it. Financial advisors don't mention it because stop paying me to manage your contributions isn't a great business model. Personal finance gurus skip it because keep grinding until you're 65 generates more engagement than you could probably ease up at 47. Let me show you the coast number math, plain English, specific numbers. Let's say your target is $2 million by age 65. That's a solid number for most people. At a 4% withdrawal rate, that's $80,000 of annual income. Add in Social Security, and you're looking at 6 figures in retirement. Not wealthy, but comfortable. Now, let's say you're currently 50 years old, and you have $715,000 invested. Here's the question. If you contribute nothing else, if you save $0 additional dollars between now and 65, do you still hit $2 million? At 7% average annual return, your $715,000 left alone for 15 years becomes, let me run this, 715,000 times 1.07, 15 times. 1.07 to the 15th power is approximately 2.76. Multiply 715,000 by 2.76. That's $1,972,400. Close. Let's run it with 7.2%. 1.072 to the 15th is approximately 2.85. 715,000 times 2.85 is $2,037,750. So at 7.2% average return, which is still below the historical S&P 500 average, you need $715,000 at age 50 to coast to $2 million by 65. That's the coast number for that target. If you have $715,000 and you're 50 and your target is $2 million at 65, you're done. You've hit the coast number. Every additional dollar you save between now and then is just insurance on top of insurance, which is fine if that's what you want. But it's not necessary. You're no longer saving for retirement. You're saving for what? And here's the thing. Most people hitting their coast number don't know it. They keep grinding. They keep maxing out contributions. They keep deferring the life they could be living for a future that's already guaranteed. Now, a quick word about financial advisors. If you have a financial advisor and you're past your coast number and they haven't told you, ask yourself why. The answer is simple. Your misery is their revenue model. Not all financial advisors. Some are actually good, but the incentive structure of the industry rewards accumulation. Advisors get paid based on assets under management. More assets, more fees. If you stop contributing, assets grow more slowly. Slower growth, fewer fees. And even the honest ones, the good ones, rarely run the coast number calculation. It's not malicious. It's just not in the standard planning software. The default assumption is that you keep contributing until you retire. Nobody built a "you could stop now" button. I read a study from Vanguard, this was the retirement projection research from 2023, that showed something interesting. They ran projections for hypothetical investors who stopped contributing at various ages versus those who contributed consistently until retirement. The results were counterintuitive if you've been conditioned to believe that every dollar matters. An investor who front-loaded contributions in their 20s and 30s, then stopped entirely at 45, often ended up with more at retirement than someone who contributed evenly from 30 to 65. The front-loader's money had more time to compound. Engine 2 had more years to work. Now, to be fair, most people can't front-load. They don't have the income in their 20s and 30s to max out contributions. But the principle holds. Early contributions are worth more than later contributions. And at some point, later contributions become almost negligible compared to the growth already happening. I want to be careful here. I'm not telling you to stop saving. I'm telling you to know when saving has served its purpose. There's a difference. The crossover point, the coast number, these aren't excuses to be irresponsible. They're tools for precision. If you haven't hit the coast number, keep saving. Every dollar matters. But if you have hit it and you don't know it, you're making a different kind of mistake. You're trading something irreplaceable for something you already have. The accountant, Gerald, $2.4 million at 67. His coast number was probably somewhere around 600,000, depending on his target. He passed it in his early 50s and kept grinding for 15 more years. 15 years of work for money he never spent. That's not responsibility. That's waste. The Holloways, they had enough in 2010. I ran their numbers retrospectively. They could have pulled the trigger then. The big trip was fully funded. They just never ran the calculation. They assumed more is better and paid for that assumption with David's mobility. And Russell, with his 3.1 million and his 5 more years, his coast number was actually, I ran this, his target was about 1.5 million. He'd passed it at 53. He was 9 years into unnecessary work when I met him. 9 years of saving for a target he'd already hit. Here's what I've noticed reading all those obituaries. The people who die with regrets about saving aren't the ones who didn't save enough. They're the ones who saved too long. The ones who hit their number and kept going anyway. The ones who treated a milestone as a starting line instead of a finish line. And the tragedy, the actual measurable tragedy, is that they didn't have to. The math was there. The calculation was available. They just never ran it. So let me ask you something. Have you run it? Have you ever actually calculated your coast number? Not your freedom number. That's different. Your coast number. The amount where if you stop contributing today, you'd still be fine by retirement. Most people haven't. Most people assume they're nowhere close. And some of those people are right. But a surprising number are wrong. They've already hit it. They just don't know. Here's what happens next. There's a psychological trap that keeps people grinding past their coast number. It's not a math problem. It's a brain problem. And the cost of it isn't money. Money you can always make more of. The cost is something you can never get back. The cost is something you can never get back. Let me tell you about the halfway trap. It's one of the most expensive cognitive errors you can make, and almost everyone makes it. Here's how it works in your brain. You have a target, let's say $2 million. That's the number you've decided means enough. You look at your portfolio and you see $1 million. Your brain does something that feels completely logical. It says, I'm halfway there. 1 million is half of 2 million. Halfway. Makes sense, right? Here's the problem. Compounding doesn't work linearly. Your brain thinks in straight lines. Compounding works in curves. And the curve is doing something your intuition isn't accounting for. Let me show you exactly what I mean. You're 55 years old. You have $1 million invested. Your target is 2 million by 65. 10 years to get there, you need another million. Your brain says, I need to save another $1 million. That's 100,000 a year for 10 years. That's impossible. I'm never going to make it. But that's not how the math actually works. At 7% average return, which again is historically conservative for a diversified portfolio, your $1 million doubles roughly every 10 years. This is the rule of 72. Divide 72 by your return rate. 72 divided by 7 is about 10. Money doubles every 10 years at 7% return. So your $1 million left completely alone with zero additional contributions becomes $2 million in roughly 10 years. You don't need to save another million. You just need to wait. Time does the work, not you. Time. Now, let's make this even more uncomfortable. Let's say you're disciplined. You decide to save anyway. You scrape together $50,000 a year. Aggressive. But let's say you do it. You add $50,000 to your portfolio every year for those 10 years. At the end of 10 years, with 7% returns, your portfolio is now approximately $2,800,000. Your $50,000 a year for 10 years. That's $500,000 of your actual labor added about $800,000 to your final total. Not nothing, but compared to what your existing money did, your original 1 million became 2 million without you lifting a finger. Engine 2 contributed $1 million. Engine 1 contributed 800,000. And you had to work for every dollar of that 800,000. Was it worth it? Maybe. Depends on what you gave up. Depends on whether you actually need 2.8 million versus 2 million. Depends on whether that extra 800,000 changes your life in any meaningful way. But here's what I see constantly. People who are already past their coast number, grinding away, saving aggressively, deferring their lives for money they will never spend. Money that becomes a high score on a spreadsheet. Money that exists to make them feel responsible while they trade years they'll never get back. Let me put specific numbers on the real cost of oversaving. This is the core revelation, so stay with me. Picture someone, let's call him Michael. Michael is 65 years old. He has $1 million saved for retirement. He's been a diligent saver his whole life, done everything right, maxed out his 401k, lived below his means, the whole package. Michael is sitting at his desk, contemplating whether to work one more year. He's tired. His back hurts from sitting for 40 years. His knees aren't what they used to be, but he's nervous. $1 million feels like it might not be enough. Just one more year, he thinks. Bank another year of salary. Build the cushion a little more. Let's run the math on that decision. Michael earns about $90,000 a year. After taxes and living expenses, he figures he can save about $30,000 if he works one more year. That's a solid year of savings, real money. Now, let's look at what his $1 million produces in retirement. Using the 4% rule, that's the standard withdrawal guideline that makes your money last 30 plus years. His $1 million generates $40,000 of annual income. That's $3,333 per month. Okay? So Michael works one more year, he saves $30,000, he adds it to his portfolio, now he has $1,030,000. What does that do to his retirement income? $1,030,000 at 4% withdrawal is $41,200 annually. That's $3,433 per month. His extra year of work, the year he gave up at age 65, which is to say one of his healthiest, most active remaining years, added $100 per month to his retirement income. $100 a month. That's the trade. One entire year of life. 365 days of waking up, going to work, sitting at a desk, coming home exhausted for $100 a month. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but $100 a month for 20 years adds up? Sure, but here's what you're not accounting for. Michael isn't going to spend that extra money. He was already fine at $40,000 a year. He's not going to suddenly develop expensive tastes because he has an extra $100 a month. That money is going to sit in his account, unspent, until he dies. Which means Michael traded a year of his life for nothing. Not nothing in a poetic sense, nothing in a literal sense. He gave up time. He can never recover for purchasing power he will never use. Here's a mock dialogue I want you to imagine. Michael at 66, talking to his portfolio. Hey, portfolio, thanks for the extra $100 a month. I'll think of you during my physical therapy for the back I ruined sitting at a desk. The $3,433 a month is great. Really helps cover the medication for the stress-related hypertension I developed during that extra year. Worth it. Sounds insane when you say it out loud. But this is the actual math. This is the actual trade. People do this every single day. They work extra years past their coast number for marginal increases in income that change nothing about their actual lived experience. Here's the psychological reversal I want you to absorb. Write it down somewhere. You think the problem is not having enough. The actual problem is not knowing when enough already happened. The fear never goes away on its own. I've talked to people with $5 million who are still terrified they don't have enough. I've talked to people with $500,000 who sleep like babies. The difference isn't the number. The difference is whether they've actually run the calculation. Fear is useful when it motivates you to save. Fear is parasitic when it keeps you saving past the point of utility. And the financial advice industry, intentionally or not, feeds that fear. Every article about retirement shortfalls, every calculator that shows you're behind, every headline about how much you need to retire, it all pushes in one direction. More, save more, worry more, work more. Nobody writes articles about the people who save too much. Nobody writes about the Gerald Matsudas of the world, dying at their desks with millions unspent. That's not a compelling fear narrative, but it's a real outcome, and it happens more than you'd think. I said earlier that most financial mistakes are brain problems, not math problems. This is what I mean. The math is clear, the coast number is calculable, the crossover point is knowable. But your brain keeps saying, but what if? What if the market crashes? What if I get sick? What if inflation spikes? What if, what if, what if? Some of those what ifs are valid. You should have insurance. You should have a cash buffer. You should have a plan for healthcare costs. But at a certain point, the what ifs become an excuse to never stop. An excuse to keep grinding because stopping feels like giving up, even when you've already won. There's another hidden cost to working longer that almost nobody talks about, the tax trap. Let's say you're 67. You're still working because you want to maximize your retirement. You're earning a good salary. You're contributing to your 401k. Everything looks responsible on paper. Here's what's happening in the background. Your income is high enough that your Medicare premiums increase. This is the IRMAA, Income-Related Monthly Adjustment Amount. If your modified adjusted gross income is above a certain threshold, you pay more for Medicare Part B and Part D. In 2026, that threshold is about $106,000 for an individual. Above that, your premiums jump. Keep earning, keep creeping up, and you could be paying 2, 3, even 4 times the standard premium. Your Social Security benefits become taxable at higher income levels. Up to 85% of your benefits can be taxed if your combined income exceeds $34,000 individually or $44,000 married filing jointly. Keep working, keep earning, and suddenly the government is taking a bigger cut of the benefit you spent your whole career paying into. And then there are required minimum distributions. If you have money in a traditional 401k, you have to start taking distributions at age 73. Those distributions are taxed as ordinary income. If you kept working and contributing, your 401k balance is larger. Your required distributions are larger. Your tax bill is larger. You've successfully saved more, only to have the IRS take a bigger slice. The system is designed with incentives. Some are obvious, some are hidden. But the net effect is clear. The government has opinions about how much you should earn in retirement, and those opinions are encoded in tax brackets and premium surcharges. Working longer doesn't just cost you time. It can cost you money in ways you never calculated. Quick sidebar. Hit subscribe if you like the content. I'm not going to beg. But YouTube's algorithm is what it is. If you don't subscribe, the algorithm may decide you don't want to see my videos anymore. Your call. Let me return to where we started. The stories from the beginning. Gerald, the accountant. David and Patricia, the Holloways. Russell, the businessman. I told you those stories to make you feel something. Now, I want you to see them through the lens of the math. Gerald died at 67 with $2.4 million. He'd probably passed his coast number in his early 50s, maybe earlier. If he'd run the calculation at 50, he would have seen that he could have stopped contributing entirely and still retired with more money than he could spend. Instead, he kept grinding, kept billing hours, kept saving. For what? For an estate that went to relatives who bought boats and vacation homes. Gerald's responsibility, his genuine, well-intentioned, disciplined responsibility, robbed him of 15 plus years of actual living. The Holloways had enough in 2010. I know this because I ran their numbers retrospectively using their actual assets and the actual market returns that followed. If they pulled the trigger then, their portfolio would have grown during the trip. They would have come home to a larger balance than when they left. Instead, they waited for one more year until one more year became impossible. David's diagnosis wasn't caused by waiting, but the life they could have lived during those years that was caused by waiting. They had permission to go. They just never gave it to themselves. And Russell with his 3.1 million and his 5 more years. I showed him the math. I showed him that he'd already hit his number. He couldn't absorb it. The spreadsheet in his head, the one he'd been building since 1998, said he needed more. The actual spreadsheet, the one with the correct calculations, said he was already there. But the brain spreadsheet was stronger. It always is, until you consciously overwrite it. These people didn't fail because they didn't save enough. They failed because they never calculated when saving had served its purpose. They treated saving as a virtue rather than a tool. They confused the means with the end. I don't want you to make that mistake. So let me give you 3 practical takeaways. Things you can actually do. 1, run the stop saving test. You have the numbers now. Portfolio balance times 7%. compared to your annual savings. If the growth number is 2 to 3 times your savings number, you've hit the handoff point. Engine 2 is doing the heavy lifting. You can ease off the gas. 2, calculate your coast number. Pick your target amount, pick your target age, use a reasonable return rate. 7% is a good baseline. Run the compound growth formula backward. How much do you need today to hit your target at your target age with 0 additional contributions? That's your coast number. If you're at or above it, you're done saving. Not done working necessarily, but done saving. You've built the engine, let it run. 3, if you've hit your coast number, stop obsessing over your savings rate. Start using money to buy back time. This doesn't mean go buy a Ferrari. It means look at your life and ask, what am I doing out of fear that I could stop doing out of confidence? Could you work less? Could you take that trip? Could you spend more time with your kids while they're still kids? The money is there. You built it. Use it. Here's the thing. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. Not because lazy investing is exciting, because it's mathematical. Because compounding doesn't need your help after a certain point. It just needs time. The mistake isn't being lazy. The mistake is working when the work is already done. I've spent this entire video telling you something the financial advice industry will never tell you. They'll tell you to save more. They'll tell you to work longer. They'll tell you that the path to security is through constant vigilance and perpetual contribution. And there's a window where that's true. There's a window 15, 20 years, maybe longer, where every dollar matters, where engine 1 is the whole game. But that window closes. And when it closes, the rules change. The crossover happens. Engine 2 takes over. And if you don't notice, if you keep grinding in a window that's already shut, you're not being responsible. You're just being afraid. The financial industrial complex makes money from your anxiety. The math makes money from your patience. Choose your engine.